first thing that came to mind when you said that is just that you can do this, and every person is so important in this work. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. I think being an advocate for children is something that we can all do, and I think it's one of the maybe last things that I feel like we can agree on as society is that children are precious members, and they're the future of our world.
Hi, I'm Angela Williams.
And I'm Katie Sudano.
And I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse.
And I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse.
Welcome to Voice Up for the Voiceless. We're so glad that you've tuned in with us today. Our podcast focuses on the hard issue of child sexual abuse. We open a space for survivors to be able to tell their stories. We interview experts in the field. We feel like this topic needs more attention, and we need to break the silence around it because it is very stigmatized and very silenced.
It sure is, Angela. And I'm so excited today. We are obviously going virtual with our guest. She is out of South Carolina. Her name is Brooke Anderson.
Yes, and Brooke is the outreach director of prevention and outreach for Dorchester Children's Advocacy Center, Children in Crisis Incorporated. And I think it's going to be a great discussion. I think we are going to be able to learn more about what a child advocacy center is, what they do, how they protect children, and then hopefully get some protection tips. So without further ado, we'll welcome Brooke to the show. Welcome, Brooke.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So, Brooke, I just am always curious how people get into this work because it's really hard work. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be the director of prevention and outreach.
Yes, so I went to school for public health education, actually at James Madison University, got my bachelor's in public health, and I was just so fascinated by the idea of prevention and education and how that could really help communities so widely. And so I didn't know that this is the specific field I would get into coming out of college. I was really just looking for some prevention education based around public health. But this opportunity came available. I became the clinical outreach coordinator first. So I really what drew me in was understanding adverse childhood experiences and how that study was so critical in public health because a lot of times public health issues that are being treated or are trying to be prevented can be linked back to adverse experiences early on in children's lives. And so even things like diabetes and hypertension and heart disease and cancers, those types of things that I feel like I'd learned so much about in public health in my classes there. It was just wild to see the adverse childhood experience study and those being potentially linked together. And so I thought if I can get into maybe the root cause of some of these issues later on in life and help kids ultimately prevent child abuse from happening, but and treat it if it does well, then I can really use my public health skills, I feel, in the best way possible. So that's kind of how I got into it. I became the director of prevention and outreach because it had just grown so much. We started doing a lot more around Child Abuse Prevention Month and really engaging community partners all over the Low Country to be equipped to know how to spot the signs of child abuse and what to do if they see it, and ways that they can partner with us and with the different programs that we offer to create spaces that are safer for children to enter into.
Awesome. Well, our viewers may not even know what a child advocacy center is. I know that it's a fairly new phenomenon. I think the early 90s is when child advocacy centers were actually established and really kind of spread across the country. So can we just educate our viewers on what a child advocacy center is and what they do?
Yes, definitely. So I think it's so fascinating that there's actually about 1,000 of them in the U.S. And I know in our state, there's 17 or 18 now. And so we actually just opened a new one in Berkeley County, which is one of the counties that we serve. So we actually, and I didn't even get time to update you on this, but we changed our name now to the K. Phillips Child Advocacy Center.
Oh, wow.
Still under, that's our DBA, and then we're Children in Crisis Incorporated, but we changed that name because our executive director, her name is Kay Phillips, and she actually was, she started out with just her and one other person. So now we're about 25 employees, and we see over 1,000 or around 1,500 clients per year. So we've just grown so much. But child advocacy centers have been around, since the early 90s, and they're a somewhat newer part of the criminal justice system. So when child abuse happens, that Manda report still goes to law enforcement or Department of Social Services, or CPS, whatever it is in that area. And then now it's by state. So in South Carolina, it's legally that they, if they pick up that case and there's enough evidence to investigate it, they need to refer that child and that family to the child advocacy center in their local area. And then we do the forensic interview. That was really birthed out of the idea that children shouldn't have to tell one of the most horrific stories of their lives multiple times to different people that may not be trained to understand how to ask them those questions, how to be sensitive to their responses, and know just how to navigate such sensitive things that children don't even understand the capacity of the things that they may be having to disclose to someone because an investigation is happening. And so our interviewers are very trained in specific training that is child focused and it's trauma informed. They're never asking like leading questions. It's strictly for prosecution purposes. So it's not therapy. But then the good news is that afterwards, after the forensic interview, we can provide them free trauma-focused therapy for them and their families if they need it. And that's all free of cost. So everything that we do is free of cost. We're a nonprofit. Some child advocacy centers operate as nonprofits. Some operate as state agencies. So, but they all usually don't charge for their services. So that's kind of the clinical end of what we do. And then we now have the prevention side of it, which is really great. It's an optional standard for child advocacy centers now. So we have a governing body out of DC that's called the National Children's Alliance. And they have standards that every child advocacy center that is accredited by them must follow. And so there's certain things that we all need to keep in place, and we get accredited every 3 to 5 years, I believe. So we're accredited now and working towards continuing to be, but we partner a lot with law enforcement and DSS and kind of a support organization to them. And then another kind of piece is that we will bring that everyone that's working on that child's case together at a table every month. We have for each county a case review. And so if there's any special cases, we're working with law enforcement, DSS, solicitor's office, school districts, maybe any special care that the family is getting. They can be at the table. As the family can't be at the table, but those agencies are often there. And so everyone can get on the same page and move forward for best outcomes for that child and family. So it really helps everyone communicate more. And the hope is that less things are falling through the cracks and we're doing the heavy lifting so the child and the family doesn't have to run around and do that themselves.
So I know that
really
a lot of children, a lot of the disclosure it's not linear. Children have a difficult time recounting what happened. Oftentimes there's a lot of fear. So of the cases that you see, on average, how many children actually get to go to court and prosecute their abuser?
So we don't really know, actually. We're not usually involved past the forensic interview. So that's a great question because it kind of paints more of the picture of what our role is. We may walk with the family, our victim advocates may walk with the family towards support services, but the investigators, we're not the investigators ourselves. So DSS or law enforcement are taking those to court, and usually we're not coming to court unless we're subpoenaed to do so, usually just as a support. So we don't always know what the outcome of those cases actually ends up being. We're
Oh,
just,
that's heartbreaking.
That is
I
heartbreaking.
know. I
I
would
know.
want to know. That's got to be tough. It's funny. Well, not funny, but the timing of this podcast is actually pretty pertinent because I don't know if you're aware, but there are several documentaries. Sorry, I can't say that word.
Documentary?
Documentaries um, on Netflix and Hulu, and I think Peacock, specifically on certain cases that have happened in the past in this country where the children fell through the cracks. And when you said that you try to fill in those cracks and those gaps for protection, it's so important that people understand that there are services out there. Because I don't know, do I don't know if it's everywhere in the United States, but do the parents have to advocate for their child to go to a service like yours, or is that kind of an automatic um, thing that the process that you take the child through?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's by state, really. I know y'all are in Georgia, correct?
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah, so Georgia is actually who we based our policies on by the state in the state of South Carolina to get um, the ability to make that legal. So legally now, yeah, parents should not have to advocate for that. It's required by law that law
Oh,
enforcement or DSS is referring those cases to us, but it's always helpful for parents to know in case there's things that happen, and if for some reason we're not involved, if parents know about us, they can definitely say that they want the child advocacy center to be involved, and hopefully that will happen. But it is by state, and we just enrolled that in 2021, so it's still pretty new that it's legal now, and it's not in every state. I know that.
So
oh, should be.
if you would, Brooke, would you, if someone is listening and they suspect child sexual abuse, let's say they're a teacher or they're a Sunday school teacher or they're a parent or grandparent or their extended family, but they suspect that some form of abuse is going on, what steps would they take?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all they need is reason to believe. And so if there's a reason to believe that this has happened, then they just need that child's name and the address that they live at if it's happening at their house. So they can make that report. Those reports would still go to law enforcement or the Department of Social Services, and they can take those reports for them. You can do that anonymously, but we usually don't recommend that it is anonymous unless it's a safety thing and reason, because then you can be seen as a support person for that family, and they should also follow up with you on what is happening in that case. It's hard because it doesn't always get picked up by them, even if we think that's definitely happening. The investigators are the ones that kind of decide how they're going to pursue that case or not. But we do say that it's always good to make that report if you have suspicion or reason to believe, because then that's documented. And if it's reported again later on, they may be able to see that. And they can also, I know that the Department of Social Services here can also just provide resources, even if they don't end up investigating. They're then in the system of trying to help them get resources for maybe whatever it is that they need.
So they can't come to a child advocacy center unless an active investigation takes place, correct?
That's okay. So they can come if they are experiencing, like, say, an investigation maybe did or didn't happen, a while ago, but it's not like they're not going to open another investigation. Parents can call and get trauma focused therapy for their child. So if they're displaying trauma symptoms, maybe they already went through that process of the legal system, but we know that that doesn't necessarily provide healing to
Mhm.
children. And so they can come and do a trauma screening with us if they're still displaying trauma symptoms, and then they can provide, or we can provide, free therapy services for them. But the parents at our center, at least, it could be a little bit different, can't just refer their child for a forensic interview themselves. That would have to come from law enforcement.
And real quickly, just because I'm a little naive in this area, what, when you say report it, who would you report it to? Like the cops or the
Law
911 or?
enforcement or DFACS,
Okay.
either
Yeah.
or both.
Yes.
I often say I think DFACS is better because I think they're more informed. I think sometimes law enforcement, it may be a little scary for a police officer to show up, and try to interview a child. And that's the whole reason for child advocacy centers. I'm real curious. Would you please speak to our audience and let them know maybe some signs and symptoms to look for that might indicate that the child is being sexually abused?
Yeah, so there's all kinds of signs that can come. Every child's a little bit different. One main one I think that's very important to look out for is like a sudden change in behavior. So if a child was originally very outgoing and boisterous, and then it seems like suddenly within a day or week or something that they're just becoming very secluded and not wanting to engage with other people, their peers, or you. That's going to be probably the most maybe telltale sign that something may be happening. It could also be that they become like very uncomfortable with any form of touch. We never want to obviously be touching children without consent, but if they never want to be touched, or they're wearing like loose or baggy clothing, or it's uncomfortable, it looks uncomfortable for them to sit down, or if they're a younger child, they may be complaining of like pain in their vaginal or their rectal areas. Those types of things can all be signs. But I like to say that the most telltale sign, tell, tell, I don't know the word.
Telltale. Telltale sign.
Yeah, if you know that child and you're seeing that sudden change in behavior, I think that could be maybe you open up the conversation and just ask them. We always want to ask non-leading questions, but say, hey, is everything okay? I've just noticed maybe your mood's changed a lot. You can always talk to me, and I'll help you as much as I can, and kind of let that space be open if there is something that they may want to tell you.
And just for education, can you let them know why you want to ask open-ended questions?
Yes, definitely. So children, they're very influential. And so if we give them something, if we're, say, like the other way that you could say it would be like, hey, I've noticed these changes in your behavior. Is your mom like hurting you at home? Or something like that. A child may just say, yeah, but they don't necessarily know. You're leading them to say something, or maybe say more than what they're comfortable or what they're ready to tell. Even if that maybe is happening, we want to give the child back the autonomy and the authority of their lives, to be able to tell you what they're ready to say. And we never want to, in an investigation, that's not going to hold up in a courtroom, because they're going to say that, you influenced a child to say something that they weren't necessarily ready to say, or isn't necessarily accurate.
And I find too, in my experience, that if you keep asking the child over and over and over, they kind of close down.
Yeah.
So it's real important that you don't ask all these questions. Your husband doesn't ask all these questions. And then grandma comes behind y'all and she wants to ask all these questions. So it's
Right.
very important that one person talk to the child and is able to recount what was said, correct?
And they may even start, if they're asked too many questions, start doubting. Sometimes trauma can affect the brain in a way that they don't remember certain parts of it, and that those memories get very fuzzy and very confusing, because it was such a traumatic experience. Our brains actually do that to protect us, but that can be really detrimental to the prosecution, for prosecution purposes, because it looks like the child doesn't know, or is confused, or doesn't remember. And unfortunately, the defense attorneys pick up on that and can use it against them. So the Child Advocacy Center tries to get the most comprehensive story from the child. You know, we know that that can happen, but we definitely don't want to encourage more of that or show more of that than needs to be done, because we want that child's story to be trusted as much as possible.
Yeah.
So help us, as a director of prevention, help our audience understand some very practical things that they can do in raising children, or if they're involved in a child's life.
Yes, I would say if you can get involved, if you're in the US, get involved with your Child Advocacy Center. There's usually ways that they are doing different trainings in the community. You could help them set those up, get connected to people more in the community. Education is so important. And I think the more that we talk about these topics and it's not so taboo to talk
Mhm.
about, the better protected children and communities are going to be from these kinds of things happening. Policies can also be very important in any spaces that you're in. I work specifically in creating child protection policies in churches and schools. We've just worked with the EMS department to do that. And so, really, every department that is interacting with children in any way should have specific policies to protect them, and that should be distributed to the employees. I would say you can also get involved in Child Abuse Prevention Month, which is the month of April in the US. And there's pinwheels and different advocacy that's happening nationwide. And there may be in other countries as well. I know there's some listeners from there. I would just research that and look into if that is happening. There can be walks. I would say putting it out on social media, talking about it within your families. One of the trainings that we do, we talk all about talking about it and just not making it something that is never talked of and it's a secret or something that's dirty to talk about, because this is really happening in more children's lives than we understand. And if we are going to protect them, then we need to be ready to talk about it and not be scared of those topics. And the more education we have, we can be equipped to do that.
So can you give us like 3 to 5 things, if you're having a conversation with a child around prevention, that a parent would practically say?
Yeah, so I would say a major one would be to use the anatomically correct terms for all body parts, starting when you're teaching them the name of their nose, eyes, mouth, hands. You know, you teach them that this is your vagina, this is your penis, and not allow those terms to be something that are secretive. Again, that is a huge prevention effort that we advocate for when working with parents. So that's one I can think of. Also, talking to kids, telling them there's a difference between secrets and surprises.
Mhm.
Surprises can be fun and they can be good, and we can, you know, practice those sometimes, but we never keep secrets in our house. Telling them if anyone ever touches you or anyone ever makes you uncomfortable, I always want you to tell me, and I'm gonna believe you, and I'm gonna trust you.
And
Uh,
you're not gonna be in trouble.
Yeah.
yeah, yes, definitely. And I think like the best prevention too is just that open communication with your child and knowing that they will come to you if something is wrong, because they trust you and they see you as a safe person to them. Then children, uh, we believe that that can be the best thing that we can do, is just consistently have open communication with them, and then they will hopefully have that open communication with you.
We had,
Excellent.
sorry, we had, I have 5 children, and when they were all little, we had one night a week where we would all sit at the table at the dinner. Well, we had dinner all the time at the table, but this was specific where we had a little candle or a little symbol, something on the table. And if the thing that we were using was in front of that person, they were allowed to tell us anything they wanted, something
Mm,
they did or something that happened or something that they said. And we, as the adults, were not allowed to offer advice or comment,
mm,
or there were no consequences to whatever they were going to tell us. And it was a great idea. I don't know how we came up with it, but it just allowed our family to routinely, weekly, not only say things that they might be ashamed of or afraid to tell us otherwise, but know that they had a safe place to
Yeah.
tell us and not get in trouble. And I do quotes, yeah, the air quotes. Um, it was a little difficult when my oldest was in like almost high school and my youngest was in elementary school. We had to kind of put some parameters around it, but there were no limitations to what they were talking about at the table. So it did lead to them as adults um, just comfortable in telling us anything.
Well, I
So.
think, and my advocacy work, Brooke, I've been doing it a long time, but I feel
Yeah.
like we're not asking our children the important questions. We're not asking them, has anyone ever made you feel uncomfortable? We're not asking them, has anyone ever shown you pornography? Oftentimes that's the door to abuse. We're just not comfortable enough. And I don't know if we don't want to know the answer or what the problem is. So I just want to stress, if you are a parent, please take an opportunity to ask your child these really important questions. Because if they don't know that they can come to you, if they don't know what is appropriate and what's inappropriate, if they don't know that you will welcome whatever they have to tell you with open arms, then they may keep that secret. And that secret, as we say, makes you
Mhm.
sick.
Yeah.
And perpetrators, on average, we haven't really touched on the perpetrators, but on average, someone who sexually abuses a child, they're not the only child that's being sexually abused. They have multiple victims, and statistics may have changed. So you may correct me on this, Brooke, but up to 115 victims in their lifetime.
Mhm.
I know that's just I can't even wrap my head around that. That's insane. But it's true. We have a lot of guests that come on and they'll tell us, yeah, they were like the one from New Zealand.
Mm.
He touched over 100 of children in a church. So it does happen. And quick question, Brooke. I know that we often look at the statistics of children being abused before their 18th birthday. But what have you seen recently? Because it seems to change, which
Mhm.
is I don't understand why the change, but
Yeah. Yeah, the most recent one that we still use is for sexual abuse 1 in 10, children before their 18th birthday. That's what we've seen. A newer one that I saw that I thought was really fascinating, was that 70% of child sexual abuse is, perpetrated by an older child to a younger child.
oh,
Um,
so youth on youth.
Yeah,
yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
youth on
we're
youth.
seeing
And
a
I
lot
think
of that.
pornography, the accessibility to pornography is really perpetuating that.
Mhm.
Yeah, the last one we had from that, I can't remember the exact year, but it was 40%. So that's a huge
Wow.
increase,
So
and
you said 70%?
yeah, that's from Darkness to Light, which is a child sexual abuse prevention curriculum that we use, and that's the newest statistic that they gave us on that.
So
That's
what would
crazy.
you say in your work, and having a lot of experience in public health, what would you say that needs to be done to protect our children?
Goodness. Well, one thing I've really been working on is policy development. It is wild how many organizations that work with children often do not have policies on what is the standard of how we interact with them. And I think that that is just so dangerous because it's just opening up so many doors for
Mhm.
perpetrators to see, oh, I can do anything I want and there's no standard that I'm going to be held to.
And
Um,
and I and I think too, we had a guest again from New Zealand. I love what she said that it was as simple as putting glass on the doors inside the classrooms, in
Mhm.
churches or in any type of situation. I
Yeah.
remember years ago in Georgia, there was a huge case where a perpetrator abused over 70 children. And he was a karate instructor
Mhm.
from a church. And they had, I guess, a church gym and they
Mm.
had a closet with all the equipment. And that's where he would get away with doing all these things. And it was just shocking to me that the parents were there, they were behind glass for the gym,
Mhm.
but they didn't even think that when the teacher took them to the closet, that anything could have happened because they said it happened so fast.
So do you have a resource that you use when developing this policy that we could offer to our viewers?
Yeah, we use Darkness to Light. So they have a sample code of conduct that you can pull up. And that is kind of what we help base ours off of. We also have a couple books. I think if I have it, Safeguarding Policy Guide, and Handling Allegations in a Ministry.
Why don't you email us those and we'll put them in the links?
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be really good material to get out. Brooke, you have been just fascinating. It has been a great interview. We could continue to talk all day, but we often close our podcast by asking our guests to just be a voice of inspiration. And so we'd like to give you an opportunity to speak to our audience with whatever that God has on your heart to share.
Sure. Yeah. I think the first thing that came to mind when you said that is just that you can do this, and every person is so important in this work. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. I think being an advocate for children is something that we can all do. And I think it's one of the maybe last things that I feel like we can agree on as society, is that children are precious members, and they're the future of our world. And so we need to really band together and protect them. And I will say, since you mentioned specifically in the faith community, we're working more with faith communities to really equip them. And this is in line with the heart of Jesus. I mean, he talks so much about how precious children are and how they're the representative of the kingdom of God. And we all need to become like them to enter into the kingdom. And so he held children at such a high place. And I think it's time for the church and Christians specifically to come back to that teaching of Jesus and really value them and protect them as much as we possibly can. And that's going to take everyone coming together to do that in all spheres of influence.
Well said, Brooke.
Yeah,
Well said. Well,
thank
we're
you.
so grateful for your work. We're so grateful that every day you're fighting for a child and fighting for their innocence and working on prevention and policy. And we'll have to have you come back on to continue the conversation. But we just are grateful that you've been with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've learned a lot already. We need to get the word out for sure. And I think it should be law that we should have these policies in place in every single area that a child could be potentially in.
That's a whole nother show.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm very for that.
We thank Brooke Anderson for being with us today. We thank you for viewing. If you have any questions for Brooke, you might just want to comment, and we'll make sure that she can get the questions and get them answered, or
Yeah,
you can email us.
Yeah, absolutely. You just go to our website, voiceupforthevoiceless.com, and just hit the contact tab, and anything that you want to ask Miss Brooke, I will make sure and have her get it. And again, please like, share, subscribe, hit the little bell so that you're notified every time we come on air, and just get the word out. This has to stop.
As always, we want to thank Mesmerize Media for making this podcast available. They work really hard in providing studio space and providing our editing and taping and all that
all the things
that it takes. So we're so grateful for their support. But if you are interested in supporting the Voice Up for the Voiceless podcast, please get in touch with us. We desperately need your help because we want to continue this message, and we want to continue to give an opportunity for survivors to tell their stories. And then, like Brooke today, has great information on prevention. So we are always welcoming experts that are working in the field. So,
absolutely.
And if you want to be a guest, reach out also.
Yep.
So I'm Angela Williams.
And I'm Katie Sedano.
Thanks for joining us.